In this episode, we talk about why direct benefit transfers are criticized and the extent to which they help alleviate poverty. We also talk about the reason why garlic prices are soaring in the country. But first, we talk about the plot to kill Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Back in October last year, the Financial Times reported that the US had prevented a conspiracy to assassinate Khalistan separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun on American soil and issued a warning to the Indian government over concerns it was involved in the plot. Since then, more details have emerged regarding the case. According to US authorities, an Indian official named Nikhil Gupta was implicated in the plot to kill Pannun. He had hired an individual to carry out the murder. The indictment against Gupta also reveals that he was allegedly acting on behalf of an Indian government official whose identity is yet to be revealed. Gupta was arrested in Prague last June and has been in custody undergoing trial ever since. To know more about the charges against him, my colleague Niharika Nanda speaks to Indian Express's Chief of National Bureau, Ritika Chopra.
So Ritika, Nikhil Gupta is the person who allegedly planned to have Pannu murdered. Could you tell us about the situation he finds himself in?
So Nikhil currently is lodged in a prison in Prague. He landed in Prague on the 30th of June. And upon his arrival, he was immediately arrested by the Czech authorities. And the Czech authorities were doing this on the request of the US government. The US government had informed the Czech government in advance of Nikhil's arrival and had also informed them of his alleged motive to meet one of the people that he had purportedly hired to kill Pannu, and that he was there to have that meeting. And the US government has an extradition treaty with the Czech government. And as part of that understanding, it had requested the Czech authorities to arrest Nikhil once he lands in Prague. And it's been 6 months that he is currently in the Pankrak prison in Prague. This is sort of pre-trial detention is what they're calling it. He is currently being tried, not exactly for the crime that he had allegedly committed, but his case for extradition is being heard by the courts in Prague right now.
What charges does Nikhil face in the US?
So Nikhil faces murder for hire and conspiracy to murder charges, each of which I think carry imprisonment of up to 10 years. That's what he's been charged with by a grand jury there.
You mentioned that a municipal court has ruled in favor of extradition in his case. Can Gupta appeal to overturn that decision?
We did have a word with the lawyer who is representing him in Prague. He basically said that the legal process allows Nikhil to appeal the decision of the municipal court in a higher court. And for whatever reason, if the higher court also decides in favor of his extradition to the US, then he could appeal that in the country's highest court. After the highest court has decided on his extradition, it is the Department of Justice of the Czech government which will have the final say on whether Nikhil is extradited to the US or not. So yes, the municipal court has ruled in favor of his extradition. He can appeal this in 2 higher courts now. One interesting thing that his lawyer did point out is that if 3 courts give a positive decision, which means a decision in favor of his extradition, the Department of Justice still has the right to decide against it. That means still has the right to say that no, we will not extradite him. But if 3 courts give a negative decision, or rather a decision against his extradition, the Department of Justice cannot still go ahead and extradite him.
And we understand that recently Nikhil Gupta was moved to solitary confinement. So do we know the reasons behind that?
So Nikhil Gupta's solitary confinement first came out in the news when his family, a member of his family who did not wish to be identified, had approached the Supreme Court last month. And in that petition before the court, in which they had urged the Supreme Court to direct the Indian government to sort of intervene in his extradition proceedings currently going on in Prague. In that petition, this bit kept coming up repeatedly. The fact that, he is in solitary confinement and he is not allowed to really interact with other inmates. And, this, they alleged, was a violation of his rights. But what we learned during the course of our reporting was that why was Nikhil put in solitary confinement? And it turned out that it was done after the Czech government received an input from the Americans saying that his life is under threat, possibly for his cooperation in our investigation. And after having received that input, the Czech authorities conveyed this to the Pankrak prison authorities, and then they put him in solitary confinement. When we spoke with the lawyer, he confirmed that yes, his solitary confinement was a result of the threat inputs. And he also said that every time Mr. Gupta moves out of his cell, he has 2 prison guards accompanying him. And that even when he has to go meet his client, earlier this wasn't the case, but now when he has to go meet his client, they sit in a room where there is a glass partition separating him from his client.
Right. And Ritika, at this time, what do Nikhil's family and lawyers claim has happened to him?
Their plea before court obviously was to seek the Indian government's intervention in his extradition proceedings, that if there is some kind of assistance that they could get from the government. And they had alleged that the Indian government was not responding to them, to their requests for help. They had alleged that, Nikhil did not have consular access in Prague. They had also alleged that while he was in prison, although he's a vegetarian, he was forced to eat meat, like they did not provide him food as per his dietary preference. They also allege that his case is a case of mistaken identity, that the US government is looking for some other Nikhil and that he just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And had it been anyone else in his place, any other Nikhil Gupta, they would have arrested him. But that he is not the person that they're looking for.
And also recently, the prison authorities responded to his family's claim of a violation of his basic rights and an inappropriate diet. Could you share what they have said in their response?
So we had reached out to the prison service of the Czech government and asking them for a reaction to the allegations which were made by the family before the Supreme Court. While they did not respond to a lot of those allegations directly, because they said that they do not want to, or rather they would not reveal details about specific prisoners, but they insisted that all protocols, all rules have been followed strictly when it comes to all their prisoners. And the fact that the prison service in Czech is under layers of scrutiny, that there are bodies and it's subjected to international rules. And they said that they wanted to emphasize that everything was followed to the T. And when we asked them specifically about him being denied consular access as well, they did not, again, respond specifically to the question of whether Nikhil got it or not. But the response did allude to the fact that every prisoner in their custody, if and when has asked for consular access, has got consular access. Actually, interestingly, later the MEA in a briefing also said that Nikhil Gupta had got a consular access.
And Ritika, we also witnessed the family filing a petition in the Supreme Court. Will that be of any help to the family?
To clarify, the court has already ruled on their plea, and they've said that they are not going to intervene because this is a sensitive matter and that they have no jurisdiction over what's happening in Prague and the case that he's involved in. The Supreme Court has sort of steered clear of getting involved in this. The family hasn't got the relief that it wanted, and the court has left it up to the government to decide whether it wants to intervene in this or not. I mean, even before the Supreme Court ruled this, when we had reached out to the spokesperson of the Department of Justice, they had very categorically told us, and we'd broken the story, that the Indian courts have no jurisdiction whatsoever over what is currently under process in our country. Not that the Supreme Court made any direct reference to that, but they have also ruled in a similar vein, saying that they had no jurisdiction, and because it involves a really sensitive matter, it's up to the government whether they want to intervene or not.
And next we talk about direct benefit transfers. Right now, political parties across the country are gearing up for the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. In the coming months, they will be extensively campaigning, holding rallies, and motivating the cadre. And along with all this, there will be promises of what they will do when they come to power. Promises that will include the implementation of direct benefit transfer schemes. For example, recently, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge said that if voted to power, the party would implement the Nyay scheme, under which women would be given at least 60 to 70,000 rupees annually. And it's not just Congress alone, of course. Such promises are made by almost every other party. Now, over the years, these schemes have been criticized for making people lazy and simply increasing the government spending. But is that really the case? To find out, we speak to Udit Misra, who writes on the economy for the Indian Express. Firstly, Udit, tell us what is the basic idea behind cash transfers?
So, yeah, Shashank, the whole practice of giving cash is fairly recent in a historical sense. If you were to sort of look at over the last couple of centuries, then it's a more recent thing. It's in the last few decades that this has sort of caught on. And this is there both in developed countries and in developing countries. And the idea behind giving cash is, well, essentially twofold. One is to sort of provide some kind of an immediate relief to the people to whom the government is giving some cash. And second is to bring them into a sort of a larger scheme of things, a larger economic system, because it might be felt that maybe the people don't even have income levels or don't have the incentives or the capability to even participate in the rest of the economy. So both as absolute immediate help and also as a bridge to cross over and sort of be part of a larger economy.
And there are some people who compare this to universal basic income, the idea of giving basic income to all citizens, regardless of whether they work or not. But cash benefit transfers are not that because they are targeting a specific section, right?
Yeah, so in common parlance, what we call these direct cash transfers or direct benefit transfers, these are targeted schemes, and these are not exactly what we otherwise call the universal basic income. Frankly, the universal basic income is a fundamentally different thing because it basically involves the government paying a basic income to all citizens, whether they are rich or poor or old or young, employed, unemployed, it really doesn't matter. They give a basic income. It also goes hand in hand with government taking away all kinds of subsidies. Both the things go hand in hand. And the idea is that if you're rich enough, then in any case, your basic income will get taxed away. So that's the basic idea behind the universal basic income. Whereas these are direct cash transfers, which are very targeted. And since no government is frankly rich enough to give universal basic income, most governments, even in the developing countries, have chosen to go for targeted income support. In the past, we used to have targeted subsidies. Now we have increasingly targeted income support.
And Udit, over the years, we have seen governments criticize these cash transfers. About 2 years back, we saw members of the ruling government saying that these are handouts, even though over time, they have leaned into them quite a bit. A lot of such schemes have been launched by the BJP. So could you talk about the general criticisms around them?
So there are 2-3 main criticisms or reservations one might have on cash transfers. One is that the capacity of the government. So when we talk in the context of India or India's economic policy, or we talk in the context of developing economies, one basic argument is that these are poorer economies, governments are poor, and they cannot simply be handing out cash because that is a short way of government sort of exceeding the deficits and it leading to all kinds of other problems.
Yeah, these cash transfers are not seen as an investment.
Exactly. It's not seen as an investment. One argument is that you have so little resources, try to spend it wisely, do not just hand over cash. But the same argument doesn't apply to, say, a richer country. A richer country typically hands out cash when it can, as we've seen in the COVID pandemic and even when the Russia-Ukraine war happened. You have seen countries like the UK and US actually giving a lot of cash, handing out checks to the people, saying that, well, here is our help to get you by this lean period. Whether it is to just meet regular expenses or to even meet, say, fuel expenses during the winter months. So giving some subsidies there. So at one level, one reservation to this is that poorer countries do not have the financial resources for this. The other argument typically against this is that it's also seen as a very populist measure, which makes people lazy. It just disincentivizes any genuine hard work. And a lot of people say that by giving this direct cash, you are raising the cost for business. So the economic activity can be held back because people now have enough money and they don't feel like the need to work. There is a counter argument to that also, saying that, in poorer countries, people are terribly poor. So some amount of monetary help will not totally disincentivize. Nobody wants to be trapped in a very low level of income. But that is the other big typical argument. But that one also depends on whether people think that the poor people are poor because they are lazy, or they are poor because they are part of an unfair system. They are not able to get ahead. That also determines your view on that.
Right, and some people even call this charity. But tell us, is there an economic argument in its favor? Does it actually lead to growth? Does it enable people to become productive in that sense?
Yeah, so increasingly in the last 2 decades, we've seen that more and more economic arguments have been placed for direct cash transfers. And this is counterintuitive because typically the traditional wisdom is to teach a man how to fish instead of giving the man a fish. So here the view is totally opposite. It is saying that there is a significant proportion or significant section of one's population which is so poor that it's not able to take part in the larger economy. And by giving a certain amount of money, which is small but still very critical for the person, you will be bringing them into the economic fold. You will be ensuring that they will take part in the larger economy, become more productive. So when we say that India's population is its strength, what good is it if half of it is suppose suffering from malnutrition or is struggling to even survive and stays in poverty? Whereas if you develop those people or those regions by putting in some money, getting them into the larger economy, you could actually be incentivizing local economy to begin with. We also know of the concept of the marginal propensity to consume. The poor typically spend a lot of the money that they get, whereas the rich typically save a higher proportion. So if you want a local economy to get energized, if you're giving some cash, you'll find that the poor typically spend in the local economy. They do not actually spend money towards imports, which come from other countries. The local businesses become viable because the poor man now has the purchasing power to actually participate in that economy. And so you develop an economy ground up. Now, if you were to say that, well, this is charity or we will not spend this, then that area may never develop. You may never be able to get that part of your country become productively involved in the larger economy.
Okay, so if we were to put it simply, would it be fair to say that unless people's basic needs are satisfied, food, shelter, some savings, unless those things are in place, you'll never get a section of people to productively be part of the economy?
Exactly. Think of an example where a family is so poor that it's using its 7 or 8-year-old child as some kind of a labor. Now, you want the family to let go of the child for 5 hours in the morning so that the child can attend school. The school is there, the teachers are there, the curriculum is there, everything is there, but the family is still not letting go because the child represents a certain economic cost. Letting go of the child is an economic cost. Now, if you were to give some money to the family, either conditional on the child going to school or even unconditional, just giving them the money, the argument could be made that maybe the family will then let go and feel incentivized to let the child take part in the education system. And that child may go on to become a doctor or cricketer or whatever. I mean, in whichever way, become more productive. You will not be able to get to that outcome without making the initial cash investment, perhaps. There is a counter argument in favor of cash transfers, which is counterintuitive from the traditional way of thinking. But in people living in abject poverty, and there are a lot of people in India who are living in abject poverty. We have the maximum number of people living in abject poverty anywhere in any country. So it matters to have some kind of a monetary help. And that's why all politicians line up. They may be across party lines criticizing each other, but just about all politicians across developing world, not just in India, do line up to provide some kind of cash transfers.
And does it end up helping them electorally as well?
The old joke is that what the politician stands for is re-elections. I suspect it's unlikely that a politician would be doing anything that would not help their chances. But there is always this mismatch between the 5-year term or 6-year term, whatever the term may be for a politician, and the time it takes for a kid to get better education. So typically cash transfers are criticized because People say that you're not investing in education and you might just win elections just by giving cash. I think both the things are true. One has to see whether the same thing is being done for the right reason in the right way. If a politician decides just to give cash and win elections, that is also possible. Nobody can deny that part.
And in the end, we talk about garlic prices. Over the past few months, garlic prices have skyrocketed across the country. The retail cost of garlic bulbs now ranges between 250 to 350 rupees per kg, which is a significant increase from last year's prices of just 40 rupees per kg. To understand the reasons behind it and the concerns it raises, my colleague Rahil Philippos speaks to Indian Express's Partha Sathi Biswas. This segment was originally aired on the 22nd of December.
So, Partha, you've written that the reason for this increase has to do with the loss of one crop and the delayed harvest of the next one. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so to understand this, we need to understand the cropping cycle of garlic. Unlike onion, garlic is cultivated only twice, that is Kharif and Rabi. Kharif crop is planted in around June, July, and it is harvested post September, October. And the Rabi crop is planted post October, November, and it is harvested post March. However, this time what happened was, as you know, the monsoon was delayed. Monsoon was delayed in covering the whole country. It reached Kerala on time, and there was a long wait in the monsoon to cover the whole country, especially the central parts. Garlic is a major crop in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan and Gujarat. Southern Indian states do grow garlic, but Madhya Pradesh alone contributes around 62% of the total garlic produced and consumed in the country. So farmers there had delayed their sowing. Now, if you remember, the monsoons only got a bit of momentum post-June or towards the end of June. So sowing happened post-June. However, there was a long dry spell starting from end of July and it lasted till around the end of August. Now, people who had planted garlic at that time, they lost the crop. So this Kharif crop, which was supposed to be ready by say September or October, was lost. They had to resow their crop somewhere in August, and that crop will be harvested December onwards. And this is the reason why we have a astronomical price rise in garlic. By the law of supply and demand, the demand is high. Mostly we do see a rise in demand in the winter months for garlic because it is supposed to induce heat in your body. People consume lots of eggs, non-veg, garlic, onion, and now the supplies are limited. That's why the prices have risen a lot.
Right. And do we know how long we'll see this trend considering, how late the crop was planted?
Easily, this price trend will continue till the end of January. And the reason I say that is that traders say that there has been plantation in tranches. Farmers have not planted the whole garlic crop towards the end of August, but they have spilled it over till September. So at present, the crop which is coming in the market is the crop which was planted, say, early August or late June, early August. And now the one which was planted towards the end of August will only be ready towards the end of January. So till the time the supply chain and the supply pipeline is straightened up, this price rise will continue. And so by any rough calculation, we can say this price trends will continue till the end of January, post which they will soften slowly.
So does this mean that the plantation and harvesting of the Rabi crop will also be affected?
Well, actually, the Rabi crop would have its own problems to fix. Soil moisture is less because monsoons has not been satisfactory. Though monsoon as per IMD is normal, but soil moisture is not conducive for plantation of Rabi crop. And as you correctly mentioned that there has been a delay in sowing of the Rabi crop also, that would have its effect towards the later half of the year. That is, the Rabi crop is mostly planted in November, December and harvested post-March. So that plantation window has also shifted a bit. That along with soil moisture content will ensure that Rabi area may be less. I mean, from what we hear on the ground, Rabi area is going to be down by 10 to 12%, and we would feel that pinch post-March when the situation will be clear. Overall, I think this even 2024 garlic would be costly, but not as costly as it is now.
Right. And Partha, this comes after we had seen an increase in onion prices. So what kind of concerns does this raise, especially considering the upcoming Lok Sabha polls?
Now, the government was extremely strict when it came to onion prices. There was a slew of measures, including a stoppage of exports, including MEP and everything, which to control the prices. Even now, if you see, onion prices are around 55 to 60 rupees a kg across the country. And despite everything that what the government did, which also included making a buffer stock of almost 7 lakh tons, nothing could prevent the price rise in onion. And at this moment, the garlic prices have started pinching everyone. Now, this scenario is going to continue for quite some time. So when the Lok Sabha election happens, which I think would happen somewhere in April, May, there would be inflation at least in onion and garlic. And how this plays up is to be seen as the days come. For the farmer, there is a lot of unrest among onion growers in Maharashtra because of the slew of measures the government has taken to cool down the prices. And there was also a statement by the Ministry of Consumer Affairs that onion prices have to be economical for the consumer as well. Now, the narrative that is going on in the onion belt of Maharashtra is that the consumer is more important as a voter than the farmer. Now, what the government would do to cool down the prices further without antagonizing the farmer is to be seen. As of now, food inflation is a big concern. Let it be onion, let it be tuar, let it be chana, let it be anything. Food inflation is a very big concern for the government.
Right. And you had mentioned that a delayed monsoon is largely responsible for the increase in garlic prices. Now, considering how rapid climate change has been, will we see this trend of rising prices perhaps intensify in the near future?
Overall, there would be more and more questions about food security. Now, food security is about production, distribution, and consumption. Now, production cycle is getting disrupted because of climate change. I mean, this is the third or fourth monsoon in the last 6 years which has failed, and where a rabi crop is at a question. Now, this is going to be a concern of not just for India, but it is a concern for across the world. Climate change is very real, and one of the first places where you face the vagaries of nature and where you can experience climate change is agriculture. And in the days to come, it is going to be more and more evident. And the El Nino, that is the warm ocean current in the Indian Ocean, is still very active. And it is going to be active till the April or March next year. It's too early to say how it is going to play up the monsoon next year, but El Nino is quite active. That means that we are going to have a warmer than usual winter, and this will affect many crops. Yes, in the days to come, we would have to have mitigation measures for climate change, but it is going to be a major concern for food security for India as well as the world.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was produced by Shashank Bhargav, Rahil Philippos, and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it and share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.